Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Longbox. I'm here with Valerie D'Orazio. Did I say your name right? I always mispronounce names.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's a D'Orazio.
D'Orazio.
Yeah.
Why should today be any different? I always mispronounce people's names. But with my last name, nobody pronounces my name right too. So I just want to thank you. You were the one who got Mark Miller to come on my channel. It was nothing I did. He just asked whose channel should I go on, and you directed him to me. So thanks a lot for that. That was great. That was so much fun.
Oh, good. I'm really glad that worked out. He's a nice guy.
He was so like it's funny because we talk like little kids. We didn't stop talking. His secretary or handler or agent said, "You're gonna have 15 minutes." And we ended up talking for 2 hours. I kept saying, like, "Hey Mark, if you have to go," like I didn't want to be like mean. And I was like, "Is he just being polite? Just keep on talking." He's like, No, this is fun. Let's keep talking. I was like, all right. And then the next day I'm at work and I get messages. I'm getting private messages from Mark. And we're talking about movies. And I'm like, yeah, I like that movie too. You know, I haven't seen that movie in like 20 years. And he responded. And then he's like, oh, I'm sorry, John. I thought I was talking to my brother. So I'm like, oh, man, I thought me and Mark were buddies. But he accidentally sent me a message. I was like, oh, man.
He's a really down-to-earth guy, you know? So yeah, I figured, you know, I referred you to him because you're a down-to-earth guy. He's a down-to-earth guy. Best type of interview. So
yeah, and it was we're both the biggest Superman fans. I enjoyed talking to him about Superman, and I really enjoyed talking to him. Like he opened up my eyes. Like apparently he's very smart, he's very successful, he's a great writer, but he's very observant. And he was saying that comic books started out in the newsstands for about 30 years, you know, and then they were in direct markets for about 30 years. And he goes, and now it's evolving. And he goes, and I don't know what the next step is. And that if I ever talk to him again, I'd like to talk to him about that. You know, I can't stop thinking about that because he's kind of right. You know, 30 years newsstand, 30 years direct market. What is it now? Is it crowdfunding? Is it, you know, Amazon print on demand? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think a big part of the comic book's appeal, I think, is I'll be honest with you, I think as a physical collectible that you can hold in your hand. Absolutely. And so I think that can never be completely forgotten, that aspect. You know, and it's something that we've had digital, we still have digital, but it's not quite the same, you know, in terms of really, and I think it has to be this combination of the magic of having that package in your hands of the comic and just the interaction with fans and the character and the ambiance.
I absolutely 100% agree with you. I thought it was just an old guy thing because I like having records, 45s, even CDs. Like I'm not paying for files to download music. And it's funny. My buddy Oscar just sent me a PDF of his comic. He's like, I want you to read it. I want you to read it. But I'm having such a difficult time reading. The comic is awesome, but I'm having a difficult time just reading it on my computer. Like I want comic books in my hand. I want to take them out of the bag. I want to look at them. I like the smell of them. You know, I like turning the page. I like feeling the weight of them in my hand. You know what I mean? It's to me the tactile part is a big part of the comic.
I agree. And I think like even for little kids, you know, like, I mean, the little kids still like, you know, physical books.
They do.
You know, and like how many of these old time children's books are still in print? You know, these beautiful replica editions, stuff like that. I think it's something about that physically holding it in your hand. It's like it's an experience, and then you keep it, and it's like an heirloom. It's like something. I think that is. I think that's part of the future of comics. Still.
Yeah. Yes. Still. I think there's going to be people, like I had a few people. I have a comic that's on Indiegogo now. It's on Fund My Comic also. And I have a few people like apologizing that they asked for PDFs. I said, don't apologize. Get what you, but you know, they live in Ireland or something. They don't want to pay $40 shipping for a comic. Yeah. I don't blame them. But they're like, they send me messages like, man, I want your physical comic, but I got a PDF, but it's not the same. And I'm like, I totally understand. The story I always tell is I dated a girl in college who owned a comic book store. And I remember like, I was like, you own a comic book store? We went to the comic book store and she took me into the back room, and it was just an unfinished room with piles. I'm talking stacks of comics from the floor to the ceiling. And she's like, do you smell that? That's comic books, you know? And we were just like, yeah, like I met somebody else that understands like even the smell of comics is fun. You know, that slightly moldy smell. I love that. Yep, physical or die for me.
I like the Baxter paper smell. I like the Baxter paper. Remember that smell when they changed to that I think it's called Baxter paper, that sort of white paper. Even that had a different type of smell, and I like that smell.
It had a different feel too. And I remember. I'm trying to think. The first Baxter comic I think I got was Teen Titans, when Teen Titans went from the newsprint to Baxter, and I just remember looking at it like comics can't get any better than this. This is the page is so white, it just seems sturdier. And I tell you, I had to change a bunch of bags and boards a couple of years ago, because I'm talking from 1984 to now, 40 years. The bags and boards, the bags actually, they started to get yellow and greasy. The old bags, the new bags don't do that, but I took the comics out. There was still those Baxter ones held up. My Todd McFarlane newsprint ones didn't. I actually had to replace a few of them. They stuck to the whatever. It was just, but the Baxter. So I thought that was like the height of comic book technology.
Yeah, I was very impressed. I remember when the Titans came out with that, and then DC had a whole bunch of them, and I was like, wow, like this is like the color's really solid and stuff, and I was like, this is really high tech.
The allure of comics is the fact that the artifact exists. Yes. You could. I just love going into my back room over here, and I got my wall of comics. Sometimes I'll just open up boxes. I'll take out a box, put it on the ground. Like I got long boxes. I'll show you a picture of my comic book room. I don't know if you've seen it, but this sentence, I have a problem. You stick it in your back pocket. What are you, a barbarian? Like,
you roll it up.
You roll it up
in half. You fold it in half. Just
like that. What are you, Dennis the Menace, right next to your slingshot? I mean, even as a kid, I don't need them to be in mint condition, but I would never put creases in them. Oh my God. Even when I have a book, I get a book, I have to use a bookmark. I don't do the dog ear thing. I see people do the dog ear thing, and yes, I judge you. I judge you, and you're going to judge me. For 40 years, I've been using my Joey Lawrence bookmark. Whoa.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah, I recently bought the Joey Lawrence Blossom doll. The garage.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this. Every day you're posting toys and stuff, and I see you got toys behind you. So you're a big toy collector too?
I am, and I got to be honest. I'm like, these days I have a lot more toys than I have comics, and I collect action figures, and I have a lot of like Barbies and other fashion dolls too, and I just love them.
Do you take them out of the box?
Most of them, like I just bought this Superman.
I know. I do the same thing when I post.
I just bought the Superman, Batman 66 Superman figure, and I was like, it looks so cool in the package. I don't want to take it out. You
put it on Twitter. It does. It looks like Elon Musk in a Superman costume.
Well, now that they said it, now that's all I can think of when I see him. It's like it's Elon Musk. It's an Elon Musk figure.
You can't get digital toys. Yeah, I agree. Yes, you have been judged, James. I'm sorry, I've judged you.
I'm sorry, James.
That I love when people say don't judge me. I'm like, dude, the brain is literally a judgment machine. Like, I can't help it. That's what we do all day long is make judgments. Otherwise, every day is the first day out of the egg, and we got to start all over again. Yeah. So I've been collecting toys, and I stopped because between collected records, at board games and comics, I had to stop something. And I stopped with toys. But lately, I went to a comic convention, and I started again. I saw this.
Oh.
The classic Drax the Destroyer and the classic
nice.
Dragon. And I was just like, I have no willpower. And that started again. I got a big stack of Marvel figures over here again. And I have a shed in the backyard that normal people would put a lawnmower and can and barbecue, but I'm going to fix it up, and I'm going to make it just like, hey, you want to see my shed? And you open it up, it's going to be just all action figures. I'm going to run light out to that.
Yeah, I was like, I kind of need a barn. Like, I have to, like, I'm kind of like slowing down my doll and action figure collecting because I really kind of need a barn to start putting them in, and I'm not there yet. So
I also, I say his local comic book store closed. Oh man.
oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I follow that stuff too about the comic book stores. I go to the comic book store by me. It's just a sad subject, but there's two old guys, and they're like the two oldest guys. Like I joke and I call them the Waldorf and now I can't think from the Muppets. Yeah, Waldorf and Statler from the Muppets, because they're just two old guys, and all they do is bicker. And then when the customer comes, they stop bickering and they talk to but the store's doom and gloom. They're holding on by a thread. They're not going to make it.
To hear that.
Do you have any thoughts on comic book stores? Like,
yeah, I used to, I mean, when I was 16, I was working, my first job at 16 was working at a local comic book retail shop, so I was just, and I, it was a very interesting experience. And it was like, I always thought these stores were magical.
Yeah.
And they're struggling now. I mean, a lot of them are struggling, and it's frustrating to watch.
My first job was a stock boy at a supermarket in a Wallbounds, and then I worked in my friend's comic book store, and I like on and off in that comic book store for 6 years, and I'm still friends with all of those guys who came in. Steve Borat, I think is his name, the guy who founded CGC. Used to come into that store, and I remember he's coming in. He's like, "Yeah, I'm going to start up a company, and we grade comic books, and we put them in plastic slabs." And I just was like, "That's the stupidest idea in the world. Don't quit your day job." And now this guy's probably a millionaire someplace, trying to talk him out of it.
I've known several people who really don't consider themselves comic book collectors at all, who just invest in the slabs.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's. I'm philosophically opposed to slabbing comics. Well, what are your thoughts before I feel?
There's a certain aura about it, like it's kind of cool, like but it's not for me personally. It's not really something I want to do. I don't want to keep too many things in package. Like when you collect toys, if you keep them too long in the package, like a sealed package, the plastic breaks down.
Oh,
and
really?
It gets all nasty. Oh, for a lot of that stuff, yeah, like old Barbie dolls. If they're in these sealed boxes for 40 years, it starts to get. And McFarlane, oh my goodness, the 90s McFarlane, like the plastic becomes yellow, and you open it up, like now, and all that cancery smell comes out of the plastic. It's that's why I don't like keep it in package.
I've seen action figures that were yellowed, and I always just assumed that like something got in, or the you know what I mean? They stored them in a moldy place, that's just. So what is it? They dry out and lack of moisture or whatever, just breaks down.
Well, I mean, it's basically there's going to be a certain amount of natural chemical breakdown in this plastic, and if you have it in a perfectly sealed package that's mostly plastic, and no air is getting in and out, it's just like this little, like it's a stew for like 30 years. And so then it's almost more safe for it to have been outside of package.
That sounds like so counterintuitive,
Oh yeah.
And because in my garage, I have those big, plastic tubs that click and seal, just filled with toys out of the box. And it's so funny when my nephews grew out of toys. They're like, "Hey, Uncle John, you want this X-Men Sentinel figure?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. I'm a 38-year-old man. Here you go. I'll take your toys." And they all look great still, but I just thought it was because I wasn't a little kid twisting their heads, but it's because I took them out of the package. That
and it's healthier. It's much healthier in those plastic. I have those plastic tubs too, and they're much healthier in there than in the original packaging after a while.
People saying, "I hope you're not in Florida. Your mint in box toys might not be mint in box." Yeah.
Oh goodness, I'm not in Florida, but my family are right there in Tampa, so they're sort of praying for them and stuff.
Yeah, in South Florida, humidity causes bags to shrivel from newsprint. Yeah. I lived in Albuquerque for a long time, for almost a decade, and it was hot and dry. And oh my God, you want to get near mint toys, and they had classic cars that had not a drop of rust on them, comic books that were in perfect condition, and it was people just stored them in boxes in their garage. because of that hot, dry climate, but here I live in New York. If I keep a dehumidifier in my comic book room because I just live in fear of, I stored comics in my parents' house for a long time while I moved to New Mexico. And that's when, the plastic bags turned all yellow and goopy. And Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man's. Out of all the comic books, those are the ones that got destroyed. They're praying for Florida. No doubt.
Yeah.
I've been messaging Chuck Dixon, like, you want to come on my channel? I'm like, why is he ignoring me? And I'm like, oh yeah, he's being hit by multiple hurricanes.
Yeah.
Got more important things than talk to me, respond to my emails. Just making sure I see everybody. Oh, Jay Lucen says this was the very first comment. You're the awesome.
Thank you so much, Jay. I really appreciate that.
And these are her links. So this is your website. This is clickable, guys. You can click on this.
Yeah, it's clickable. It's just like a simple portfolio website that lists projects I've done and all that jazz. And then that's my Twitter or my X.
Yeah,
and
I will never say X. Sorry, Elon. It's still
okay. So, and then the YouTube is just like a bunch of videos with some, toys and conspiracy theories and junk and all sorts of stuff. So, enjoy.
So we were talking about slabs. I'm all over the place. What you said is there's and I agree with you that there's people that just buy them and they're not into comic books. They're just collecting, the speculators. Not
right.
All they do is they make comic books less affordable for me. Is the way I look at it. You know what I mean? They take like a Avengers #4, put it in a plastic slab, and it's not a comic book anymore. I got into a friendly argument with Jimmy Palmiotti about this. I'm like, oh great. You took another comic book and you took it out of circulation. It's no longer a comic book. I mean, like, we can't see the letters page in that. We can't see the ads. And he's like, yeah, I have it's in a trade paperback. I'm like, are the letters in the trade paperback? Is Stan Soapbox in the trade paperback?
Yep.
People say I'm crazy. On Sundays, I take out old comics at 10 a.m. and I do not really a reading, but I talk about them. But people are like, is that really Fantastic Four #1? I'm like, yeah, that's what it is. And people are like, I've never seen the ads in it. I've never seen well, there wasn't a letters page, but things like that. I don't know. I like comics. I got into arguments with my cousin because I'm like, you're not a comic book collector. You might as well be buying gems or coins or,
And they're slabbing everything. They slab video games and they're slabbing like Topps, unopened packs of Topps cards and everything.
Yeah, Red Letter Media. I couldn't think of the name of it, but they did a video where they made a fake movie. They made a fake VHS tape. They just took a VHS, they made a new box, everything, and they sent it and got it graded and slammed. And the company was just like, this isn't a real movie. Like, they got caught. But I think that's funny. And then they took a crap movie, sent in their best copy and got it, and then put it on eBay to see how much it would sell for. It's like, I don't know. I don't want to pay $1,000 for a VHS tape that I can never play.
Yeah, I mean, that gets really wild. Yeah, they grade the VHS too, and I think CDs and stuff.
Yeah,
that's yeah. Anyone slabbing Pogs?
Remember Pogs?
Yes, I do.
They were so big when I was working in the comic book store. Kids collect them just like kids collect Pokemon cards, but I don't see anybody playing. My nephew got into Pokemon, so I bought him a deck and I bought him a play mat and everything like that. And he's like, I don't like this game. I just like the cards.
But see, then again, the kids like the physical things, and it's like, I have a hobby shop near my house and they don't sell American comics. They sell Pokemon cards and all the different card games, and they sell skateboards and they sell manga and Funko, and that is it.
It's funny that you said that. I have a mall by me, and there's a comic book store in the mall. So every once in a while, my wife and I, like, we call it 80s Day. We go to the arcade, and then we go to the food court. I always joke that I want to put on like a big lime green shirt with a big collar, like in the 80s. She's going to do her hair big. And we're going to go to the mall, and then we always stop at the comic book store. And the whole front of it is records, which is kind of cool, like LPs, then CDs, then Funko Pops, then manga. And I'm not joking. There's and it says something comics. I forget the name of the store. And in the back, there's just one little shelf of comics. And have you ever been to Newbury Comics in Boston?
No.
Yeah, I dated a girl who was a flight attendant at the time, so she would travel for free. So we went up there for my birthday, and I was like, I want to go to Newbury Comics. I was so disappointed. It was the same thing. It was a record store, a used closed vintage store, and then one little
That's
thing.
The one thing of comics.
Yeah, that was 25 years ago too. So
yeah. Hey,
26 comics, not a single slab. Yeah. I got so mad. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I was
No. I had some pugs, but I don't think I liked them much. I never got into pugs. I never got into pugs.
Yeah, I got into Magic the Gathering cards because that was like my main means of money when I was in Albuquerque for a while. Me and my buddies would get Magic cards and sell them. We were like the Breaking Bad of Magic. We're like, what do you need? What do you need? But I still like the game, but I can't play it. It's too expensive. Do you play Magic? Are you familiar with the game?
I have some cards and stuff like that. I think they're interesting, but yeah, I never got into playing that stuff.
Yeah, it's a collectible game, meaning you buy a box of cards and you don't know what you're gonna get, so you're gonna keep buying and buying and buying because you want to get the rarer cards because they're more powerful, and so it's just like obsessive people like me. I can't do it. I can't get into. I can't get into. I'm not telling those Magic stories I told Rita. Yeah, I'm not getting into that.
Well, Breaking Bad of Magics is very intriguing.
Well, my buddy worked in the warehouse for the Southwest for Magic the Gathering, and he would go to work, and when nobody was looking, he would throw sealed cases out the window, and there was a dumpster. And then around 2 o'clock in the morning, me and him would drive back. This was the 90s before like security cameras everywhere and everything. And he was a skinny guy. I would help him up. He would go into the dumpster. We would take all the cases and they would break them open, sort them open. And like, as a joke, I would like have like a trench coat and I would open them up and they would be all, yay, what do you want? We would go, it was a college. So we'd go to the Denny's, we'd go to the IHOP where all the kids were playing Magic. And literally that's how we paid rent a few times, and then we went to a comic store and we had a full case. And the guy, I was like, $200. And the guy's like, okay. And he takes the case. And he goes to the back room. Then he helps a customer. And I'm like, okay, he's helping a customer. And then he helps somebody else. I'm like, hey, buddy. He's like, oh, do I help? Hi, can I help you? And I'm like, yeah. Because he knew it was hot, so he knew we weren't going to call the cops. I don't know what you're talking about. So Jeff's like, oh, this is all. And I'm like, hey, Jeff, I don't know. And so I just asked him, I go, what's the deductible on the windows if they would happen to get smashed? Is it more than $200, do you think, for all of these windows? Like, would you have to lay out more than, say, $200 to replace all of these windows if they just happen to get smashed? The guy's like, all right, paid us for. I was like, you're never going to come. We'll never come here with cards again. So there you go.
But that's how like the very late 80s, early 90s with the comic book boom of like, Spider-Man and Liefeld books. And it was a lot like that too. People were breaking in, like people broke into the comic book shop in the middle of the night and there's hot stuff everywhere. And it was just like people coming in, pulling like, like the first Liefeld out of their jacket. And it was a lot of that stuff. Yeah, I remember that.
I remember the woman I dated. They had a warehouse in the back of the store. At one time, they were a distributor for comics. So I'm not joking. They had like land is cheap in New Mexico compared to New York. So they have like 3 or 4 garages, and you would open it up, and it was just filled with comics. So somebody broke in and they stole 6 long boxes of comics, but I guess it was dark, and it was Pizzazz. Do you remember Pizzazz magazine?
Oh yes, I do.
So she was, yes. So she was. Thank you, whoever cleared out our warehouse of Pizzazz magazine. But she had probably still has boxes of Spawn #1. They would have, that was like a big comic for a while, and now I don't know, what's it, like $5? Spawn #1. They printed
years ago, I helped somebody sell his collection of he had all the Image #1s, and it was it was rough. It was rough. We didn't get a lot of money for that stuff. for a lot of that stuff because.
Yeah. So let me ask you. So you were working in a comic book store in the 80s, 90s. What, I don't know your age, and I'm not going to ask your age, but when were you working in the comic store?
I was working in retail, comic retail, in the very early 90s.
Okay.
Like 90, 91, 92.
Okay, so that's the good old dark ages. Like, you know, I was working in the 90s also. Now, they always, the stereotype is like, oh, the girls weren't welcome. Did you find any of that? Were you welcome in the comic book stores? Did anybody bust your chops or what are you doing here? You're a girl.
I was welcome. You know, I was welcome, but I mean, you know, it was a little bit like I'm 16 years old, stuff like that, you know, kind of like chick, like, you know, it's sort of like it's a lot of nice people. And then, you know, there are a few guys who really sort of kind of hit on you, you know, but I mean, it all balanced out. But I mean, I had a good time, you know, and I learned a lot about comics and
right.
You know.
Like I remember when I was working at the comic book store, girls came in and like I don't know. Even back then, I was just like, you know what? We don't hit on the girls, you know what I mean? But so we didn't hit up. Like Larry was the boss. He never really had to say that.
My boss's name was Larry too. My boss's name was.
It's funny because Larry 1 opened up a comic book store, then he sold it to Larry 2, and we used to say Earth 1 Larry and Earth 2 Larry. So I don't know. Maybe everybody in the comic book store has to be named Larry. I don't know. That's funny. Oh, where was this comic book store that you worked in?
It was in Brooklyn.
I was going to say, if we worked at the same comic book store and didn't know each other, that would have been amazing.
Well, it was starting to cross my mind. It's like,
Mine was in Long Island, the Incredible Pulp. It was you know, one of the first comic book. Well, it was the first comic book store that I have ever known, and at one point, it was, I think, the longest running comic book store in New York, and then it just you know couldn't sustain itself. So, but when we worked there, it was just, you know, when girls came in, we were awkward, nerdy guys. We wanted more girls to come in. Like, we were into comic books and Dungeons and Dragons because we couldn't meet girls. You know what I mean? Like, if a girl came in, we were like, we didn't know what to say to them anyway. So we didn't have the ability to hit on the girls because we weren't cool and suave. But like contrary to all the stereotypes, like, we wanted them to come in. They were welcome. If we knew a girl that was into D&D, we would have been like fighting for her to join our group, just because it would have been like add to the prestige of our game. You know, look, we're not nerds. There's girls. So like I always find this whole argument like we weren't welcome and we were chased, like, at the risk of being mean. I think girls chased away girls from comic books and Dungeons and Dragons more than boys. You know, what do you think about that?
Chased out. I was never chased. I mean, no one ever, you know, and I went to the comics stuff, like no guys ever said, like, you know, you shouldn't be in this fandom and you don't know what you're talking. I just didn't get a lot of that. I didn't get a lot of that. I mean, I think sometimes with girls, it was a little different because it's like, there's not as many girls. And sometimes it's like the girl wants to be the only girl in the crowd.
It's funny. My buddy started dating one of the girls. And that's what she said. She goes, the best thing about being in this comic group is that I'm the only girl. She goes, the worst thing about this comic group is that I'm the only girl. She goes, but I don't know if I want it to change. So you know, I can't speak on that, but it's funny she said that, you know. But you know, I don't know. Did any, we got a bunch of people watching. Tell me in the chat, did you guys chase away girls from the store? Did you want girls to go? We had one girl that came in the store and her father didn't want her to read comics. So it was just understood. She bought the comics. We didn't really want people using the bathroom, but she used the bathroom. She went in the bathroom and she literally put all the comics under her clothes. And when she would leave, and I'd be like, you know, I'd give her the meaning you can't see it, and she would go home. She'd have to sneak in comic books. But
yeah, you know, oh goodness, yeah. I know. I mean, my dad introduced me to comics. You know, like he took me to like, you know, the first like comic book stores when I was like 8 or 9. You know, and so like, you know, and that's all I kind of knew was, you know, it was comics. And the only comic he wouldn't buy me the Punisher miniseries in the mid-'80s. He would, because he's like, that's a crime book.
Which comics? She didn't steal any comics. She bought the comics and hid them from her father. Her father was a college professor that was like, comics are trash. You know. Yeah.
No, I mean it's the Punisher. I remember was the one where it's just like, no, that's adult stuff.
Right. I even as a kid, like the story I always tell is I couldn't read in third grade. It's such a shame that the public school system let me get to third grade and I literally couldn't read. But I wasn't interested in reading. I don't think I was a dumb kid. I just when you went home, who reads? When you go home, you don't do math. And then my friends were all into comics, so we would all hang out, and I'm pretending to read and faking it, and then but good thing Marvel had great storytelling, so I could fake it really well. Then after a while, I got embarrassed, and by the end of third grade, I was in the reading group for all because of comics. So I remember my mother was like, "He's reading, leave him alone," and then that became like, now I'm surrounded by books. I don't even watch TV anymore. All I do is read. But even back then, when my parents were glad that I was reading, like I couldn't read the Dracula comics, the Conan comics. You know what I mean? Like I could get the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, the Spider-Man. Even Doctor Strange was a little iffy. I remember I subscribed to Doctor Strange. So my mother got it from the mail, opened it up, and it was Doctor Strange with some devil thing, and then Clear with her cleavage showing. You know what I mean? It was like, my father's like, let him, leave him alone.
My mom was like with that about the Marvel Handbook of the Dead. Remember they had Marvel Handbook, and then they had the ones of all the dead characters, and like the covers, like everyone's dead. And my mom was like, "Oh, that's gross." Yeah.
There's something distasteful for it. Yeah, and the Punisher was brutal back then. The Punisher was always brutal, like to the point I didn't like the Punisher. I actively avoided. So it's funny talking to Mike Baron. I was just like, I avoided your comics. Like I didn't read the Punisher until Garth Ennis because I was a big fan of Hitman, and and then I went back and read them all. But to me, the Punisher was always like, he's a serial killer. Like he's not a superhero. I want good guys. I still like good guys. Well,
he's the executioner. I mean, he's basically the executioner.
Right.
And so like it's. Yeah, no, I mean, I ended up reading the first Punisher miniseries, is Mike Zeck one. I borrowed it from my friend Keith in middle school, and that's how I read it.
And then your dad, like Don says, Dad wouldn't let you buy the Punisher, so you ended up writing the Punisher. I always ask this. Old Dirty Fatty brought up RPGs. Did you ever play Dungeons Dragons or Gamma World or any of those old fun role-playing games?
I was always kind of fascinated by the lore and the books. Like I was fascinated by like the rule books with all the information, but I never played it. No. I didn't play a lot of video games either. The big video game for me was Burger Time.
I got into video games, and then I realized I'm going to get fired. I'm going to get divorced. Like I cold turkey stopped video games. So people ask me video questions. I literally don't know. I don't want to know, because I know if I started playing Red Dead Redemption again, I'd never stop. It's too much fun.
It would just be an addiction. Yeah.
So I like what you said about you like the charts and everything like that. Do you find this to be true that like most comic book people, like I don't know, like we're a little compulsive. I don't want to say OCD or anything, but we're a little like anal retentive. We like our charts. We like to organize things. Like, are you big on continuity in comics? Do you think it's important?
I'm very fascinated by the idea of continuity and the people like Mark Grunwald, who really sort of elevated the idea of continuity, like in the late 70s and early 80s, into something that was almost mystical. Like and then that sort of turned into Crisis of Infinite Earths. Like I'm very fascinated by that stuff, but I'm not like militant that everything has to be this one straight continuity. But the continuity does help grow and maintain a loyal readership. There's no doubt about that.
Well, I'm pretty strict with continuity, to the point like I quit Marvel and DC when I found that they were straying from continuity before they even got like weird politicals. I think the political stuff was like around 2016, 2000. I was already out, so I was like amazed when I heard other people. I'm like, and people were asking me about it. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, because I got mad when they didn't know where the rhino was from. I got mad when they put the Black Panther's family tree in the wrong order. So that got me. Yeah, Good Idea Comics says continuity is a dirty word these days. But as I get older, like I could appreciate those Silver Age DC comics that really don't care about continuity a little bit more. So I relaxed my stance, but I think without continuity, there's like it almost doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like
That's the thing. Like if you kill off a character, you know, like you have that important character death, and it's like this big thing, you know, and then you reverse it, or say there's all these different Earths and they're alive in this one. It does weaken. It does kind of weaken, in my opinion, everything when you do that. Yeah.
You know, Marvel never really rebooted. Like DC seems to reboot like every 5-6 years after the Crisis on Infinite Earths. It was almost like they let the cat out of the bag, and now it's just okay. Every 5 years, let's just reboot, to the point where I have a hard time getting into, because I find it doesn't matter, and it's silly because we're talking about wizards and guys who dress up like bats and Green Lantern and stuff like that. But like, if it doesn't matter, and they're just going to throw it out the window and start all over again, and I think that's why people are drawn to manga these days, because manga is a complete story. It has, this is the beginning. You see character growth, and it ends. And as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, when manga ends, it's done. They move on. They do something else. Like, I
mean, often, and I mean, you have kids. I mean, and these are kids that are reading like following every volume of a story that might have been written decades ago, and there's something about magical about that.
Yeah, Don, excellent artist. Yeah,
yep.
He's back to making art. I have 55. I think I'm up to 56 nieces and nephews now, and I'd say about 30 of them read manga. None of them read comics. And they'll come over and they'll look at comics like, oh, that's pretty cool, and then they'll talk to me about Full Metal Jacket or One Punch Man or stuff like that. And I'm just like, yeah, that sounds cool. And they're all into it. And I ask them, why don't you want to read comics? And they're just like, well, where do you start? I pick up a comic book, I'm confused. It doesn't make sense. He goes, somebody will be like, oh, you got to get Batman #4. And then I get Batman #4, and it's the wrong Batman #4. It wasn't the one he was talking about. It started over again, So I just think like they're killing themselves, by doing this.
I mean, the best thing they can do is start releasing some of these popular stories, like old stories from the past, in like a manga type form, and have the volumes affordable, not like like $300 essential volumes, but like just have it in a manga format, like that's affordable, and put it in these hobby shops. I think that would go a long way.
What is my total? Continuity. They just tried to put. Didn't they make like Hush, like a manga size Hush? They put it in store. Continuity can't be so. I understand that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you're still reading. Continuity can't be so strict, or you're hamstrung by right. Like I remember.
I get that.
I remember I had a friend, Scott, and his dad collected comics, and we were reading Tales of Suspense before Iron Man even debuted. Shows you how. And one of the guys went to Atlantis in that comic, and then later on, I'm reading about Namor and Atlantis, and I'm a little kid. I must have been like 7 years old, going, but this isn't the same Atlantis. Yeah, they can't do it. Like, so are we beholden to an 8-page story that nobody read from like 1958? Yes, I understand that continuity, which is why I say don't write stuff. Don't kill off Superman when you're just going to reboot him.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. You're going to say, now Superman dies. No.
Right. Yeah.
Not for long. I mean,
what year was that? I forget what year they killed Superman. But even as a kid, I was like, I was like offended by that story. I'm like, they're tricking me. They're not keeping Superman. There's no way. That was like the first time I got the idea of it being a scam. Like I didn't really get that offended by killing off Robin, because I knew it wasn't Dick Grayson. They're not killing off Dick Grayson. They're killing off the Robin that nobody knew he was Robin at the time. So I knew he was going to stay dead until he wasn't dead anymore either. But like, I think like the example that I bring up is like Jawbreakers from your boy Zach, Richard C. Byers. He killed off all the characters in the first issue, and now 10 years later, he's struggling to bring the characters back, which, again, I'm sorry, Zach, but it was a mess of a comic that made no sense to me. It's like, don't kill off your characters unless you mean it. Don't.
Yeah.
Or Doctor Who, timey-wimey. It's different. Doesn't matter. Multiverse, which brings us to how do you feel about multiverse stories?
I think they can be wonderful, and then they can also be kind of terrible. I mean, they can be overdone and overused. I think it's a balance, and it should be a special event. That's really what I think. It needs to be a really like Crisis on Infinite. I'm aging myself here, but like they planned that out so well.
Yes.
So well, with so much respect for the source material, even of the characters they were killing off. And so, I think it was done so well with that.
It was done so well. It was done with respect. It was done with talent. Marv Wolfman really did his research. He loved those characters. George Perez, he wanted to draw every DC character, which, oh my God, what a task. And it was a good story. It was a fun story. And then like Supergirl died. It was a big deal. It was emotional. The Flash died. I'm still mad they brought back, because his death to me was so perfect. He became the lightning bolt that went back in time and gave himself the powers. I love that. And they never should have brought it back. And to their credit, they were supposed to be gone. It was supposed to be the new way. What I mean? The problem with Crisis on Infinite Earths is they should have, all of DC, that should have been the one time I would have accepted that they started everything over with one, and instead they were like fixing like, who's Donna Troy now? Who cares? You start all over again. There was no Golden Age Wonder Woman. So make new characters. And then they wanted to tell the Legion of Superheroes, start all over again, tell them the Great Darkness story. It's like, you told all those happened in the past content. Let's make new stuff now. And that's to me what killed DC is they half-assed it. You know what I mean?
Well, they kept saying, let's do another Crisis.
Right.
Let's do another one. Let's do another 52. Let's do another one. And you got to be, I think, you got to be really sparing. Do that really sparingly, for the course of many decades. Deaths used to be special events. Yeah.
Right. I mean,
they used to be special events, and now it's like,
and now like they're bringing back Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man in the movies, just from another. And I just like, so it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. I know you want to sell a movie, but like, then don't kill off Tony Stark then.
Yeah, I love Robert Downey Jr. so much, and I hope this movie is great, but I would have preferred it maybe like, he could have been Iron Man turns into Dr. Doom or something, because we know him as Iron Man. So now he's Dr. Doom. It's weird. It's odd.
Yeah. Aunt May, she's the biggest paradox in comics. She's the frailest woman in the world, but yet she survived like everything short of a nuclear strike.
Yep.
No, a reboot every year. Well, issue number 2 of Heroic Tales is a reboot of issue number 1. Just, Patriarch dies, issue number 1, and then I reboot it. Crisis on Infinite reboots is name the story. No,
well, because number one sell. Number one sell. That's why they do it. I mean, when I was at DC, we all knew this. Number one sell.
You've got to be familiar with Through the Wanderer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was like a running gag. Is it number 1? Like in the letters page. Next issue, number 1. No, it's not number 1, Sergio. It's number 1. Because they were on PC Comics, EC Comics, Image Comics, Marvel Comics, and I think now they're at a IDW or Dark Horse, I forget. But they had more number 1s than like most comics. Yep. I read both comics and manga, and the readers allowed more time with the characters. The stories are more engaging with new and interesting comics. Just redo the same stuff. Yes and no. I agree and I disagree, because like, again, I'm like a broken record. I talked about that Chris Claremont run on the X-Men. I got to know those characters. There was, as Chuck Dixon calls it, the illusion of growth, the illusion of change. The status quo kind of was maintained, but at the same time, you kind of thought it wasn't. And it was really good. And then, it ended kind of like, it seems like X-Men just reboots. They just, Storm is now on Team Blue and Cyclops is now the leader of Team Gold. And it's really just, mixing a bowl of soup and seeing where everything goes. Aunt May is an immortal mutant. There you go. Jay, why aren't you writing comics? That's a brilliant idea, to find out that she pulls off.
They say that Squirrel Girl is the most powerful character in the Marvel Universe. I mean, I think Aunt May should be the most powerful character. Like secretly, she's got the
thing going on. She's a watcher or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I had an idea for Miles Morales because they apparently like the character, but like people still call him Miles Morales. They don't call him Spider-Man. And then they toyed around with him being Thor and what. So I was thinking, what if like if I was to write Marvel, I would take Miles Morales and I'd find out like who's super popular right now, like Wolverine, right? Deadpool. And all of a sudden he wakes up one day and he's Miles Morales, Deadpool. And he's like, what's going on? Like, I was Spider-Man. And like, he remembers he was Thor for a little while. And then he's slowly turning into Wolverine. And you realize his power is he copies whoever's the most powerful superhero or whoever's the most popular. And give him the name Zeitgeist. He's his own character. Zeitgeist.
Oh, I love that name. Zeitgeist? That's great.
So
you got to save that for yourself, John. You got don't give that away for free. That's a good one. That's a good idea. Yeah.
Well, they already had a Zeitgeist character in Marvel, and he had acid sweat. So I'm like, you took a great name, and that doesn't fit the character. Wow, the chat is going by so fast, guys. I can't even catch up with it, which I appreciate it. How is it that IDW had a couple of decades of continuity? They're able to retell fresh, but Marvel, yes. I get so mad when like I'll say like, okay, Marvel, let Captain America go, let Thor go. These actors now are pushing 60. I'm sure Chris Helmsworth doesn't want to maintain the body shape that he has to maintain. So let's get Machine Man. Let's get like the real Valkyrie, not that unlikable black actress who played Valkyrie, but like I'm trying to Son of Satan.
Son of Satan would be great.
Yeah, you could get the Defenders, like the real or the Champions, Hercules now. And Ghost, and people like, yeah, but nobody likes those characters. And I say nobody liked Groot before Guardians of the Galaxy came out. Rocket Raccoon was like a jokey character. And let's be realistic, how many people really cared about the Guardians of the Galaxy? And they made it $1 billion franchise because they made a good movie with good writing and good characters, good cast.
Well, that's the key thing. If if you have like a good writing and good characters and good cast and all that good stuff, you can bring anything to life. You can make I think you can make anything really special.
Rom. Does Marvel have the rights to Rom? That's like they
put out a facsimile edition, like I think like a couple years ago. So I don't know if they have the rights, but they reprinted it. Now it's gonna be Arachnid Lad.
Yeah. Kid Spider Kid or something. Tessa Thompson is unlikable. Yeah, believe it or not, she's very unlikable. She's very unlikable. Her and Brie Larson should have a contest. Who's more unlikable?
Ouch.
I don't mind Carol Danvers becoming Captain Marvel. I thought that the character's been there since 1968. Like, I don't mind that. It's a perfect evolution of like I don't mind when like Wally West became the Flash because he was there from the beginning. He paid his dues. The character earned the gravitas. I just don't like when, hey, look, Miles Morales is now Spider-Man and he's the Spider-Man, or Gwen Stacy is now Spider-Girl or what. She's supposed to be dead. I don't know. That's a pet peeve for me. Oh, we just grabbed one from another dimension. Doesn't matter. Nothing matters.
Yeah, I mean, the things like Gwen Stacy's death was a very important thing, and
yes. Like Doctor Who says, it was a fixed point in time and it shouldn't be changed. Like Gwen Stacy, Uncle Ben, Bruce Wayne's parents. These are characters that their death is defining. They should never come back.
Yeah, I never like to see his parents, like one of them was still alive and all this stuff like that. I really don't like that.
I didn't like what Marvel did. They brought back the Punisher's family and then like insulted him. Like,
oof, yeah, that was wow. It's like on the same level as Joker too. Like, let's destroy this character.
Yeah. This Joker movie's not getting too much love. So I've been talking about, I've been babbling. So you worked for Marvel Comics. Did you work for DC also?
I did. I worked at DC from like 2000 to 2004 as a assistant editor, and then like in the late aughts, I wrote a few comic books for Marvel.
Yes. Yeah, so how was that? How was working for Marvel? What years were you working for Marvel? Because I was their electrician for a while. I wonder if we ever just like if I ever put a ladder down and you tripped over it or something like that.
I started. I think it was Joe Quesada reached out to me in 2006, and we were trying to develop some projects. I was sort of tracked to do a manga version of Cloak and Dagger.
Okay.
For young people, and so which was kind of interesting, but then that got canned before it came out.
Was that part of that? Remember Marvel did the Marvel manga, and they did like a 12-issue series of a manga.
Yeah, I don't remember. I think it might have been part of it. Was supposed to be part of that.
That was,
but it just
excellent. That was really good. Like once you understood it was a different thing than Marvel, it wasn't supposed to be part of that. That was excellent.
Yeah, that means it was very high quality stuff, So it's like that was sort of like how I started, and then when the plug was pulled on that, as they called it a consolation prize. They were going to give me like a one shot to do, and so I pitched all this stuff like Thing story and the Punisher story and Wolverine, and I had even the Circus of Crime, all these things. And then they're like, you know what? We're going to do the most incredible feminist Punisher comic book ever made, and we're going to give you the plot, and that's going to be your comic from us. And so, yeah.
And is that the Butterfly, Punisher Butterfly?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So I mean, basically, I was given the plot. And before I wrote for Marvel, like I had done like a blog with like just sort of talking about my life and stuff like that. And so my editor was like, here's what we're going to do. You're not going to write the Punisher, but you're going to write this female character, this new character called Butterfly, who's a hit woman. And it's really based on you and your personal stories in life and this and that. We're going to base it on you. And everybody will kind of know it's about you. But in the end, the plot is, in the end, the Punisher has to murder her. And she has to die. And they said, that's the plot. And write a story. And I said, okay.
I didn't know it was supposed to be based on you. Now I got to ask, is it based on you?
Some of the stuff in there, not exactly. But it's, I was basically encouraged to write things that are very personal, and they're not exactly like the stuff in there, but I was encouraged to make it kind of a personal book.
Okay.
But it kind of shook me a little bit that they were encouraging me to do this, but that my character had to be shot dead by the Punisher.
Yeah, we're gonna make it's all about you, but you got to be killed at the end. It's like I don't know how to react to that.
Yeah, so like that was really weird, and and then I would get like editorial notes, kind of like it's a sort of the thing, and then she really wants to have sex with the Punisher, and she wants him to shoot her, and it's like a big orgasm, and I'm like, and I'm reading this, and I'm just like, I'm so naive. I'm just like, I'm in danger.
This was in Marvel Max. This was the adult line. Just this wasn't
right.
going.
So no. So I mean, it's fine. It's fine. I'm not the complete flower, but it was just sort of like, it was just like, it was wild. It was wild, and it was marketed as a like I was sent to all the different women in comics panels, and all this different stuff was marketed as like a feminist book. Finally, a feminist book with the Punisher logo on it. But it was also it was wild. It was a very wild thing, and I was very naive. And so I just sort of ran with it.
I'd say if you're going to get killed by somebody, the Punisher just kills you and moves on. It's not like he's a sadistic torturer. So, yeah. What year was this printed?
Was it 2010? Let's see.
I can't see the date. I'll open it up and look.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's something like 2010, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, because this is when I was full on into the Punisher, I got everything with the Punisher on it.
And the art is beautiful. 2010. Yeah, it's gorgeous. The art is gorgeous. Like I felt so lucky to have an artist like him do it. He did such a gorgeous job. Like, I mean, my goodness, that was wonderful.
As I was reading it, I was thinking, like, you cared too much about, because again, that's guys, spoiled, she dies at the end. You cared too much about a character that you knew that was going to die at the end. I was like, this is a shame. This should have been put in a novel. You know what I mean? Yeah. Now, how is that? Like when they tell you this is what you're going to write, this is the motivations. Like,
oh, I just want to say something. We have a faulty fire alarm here, so if you hear this thing, that's going to go off. I'm really sorry. I'm actually going to put my headphones on. The house isn't on fire. Hold on.
Okay, good.
Yeah, because that would be hilarious. But all right. It's like when they cook, when they cook, it just goes off. So
same thing. If I cook, my kitchen is so small and the smoke detector's right there. So I actually take the fire thing out, put it on the porch when I cook. And one day I'm going to forget to do it. My house is going to burn down. All my comics. All my comics are going to be.
So so I think one question they had was, did they ask you to off yourself?
Yes. Where did it go?
Yeah.
So many. The chat is going so quick that I'm missing everything. Yes, but one of them was, how weird is that they ask you to off yourself? I can't find it. Oh yes, here it goes. So they ask you to off yourself.
Yeah.
I want, like, John Byrne started out, he just did what he was told, and he would make funny stories about it, that he was just the art robot, and then later on he became a co-plotter and then famously a writer. And like, this sounds to me like they wanted you to be a writer robot. Like, here's the character, here's the situation, you know what I mean?
It was more of like
and then make it yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, it was more like, I guess it was kind of like a gimmick, but the problem was when the book came out, because they promoted it so much as the Punisher feminist book, then I got a lot of, not just trolling, I mean, I got threats of physical harm and death threats. So now I'm getting death threats from a book that Marvel asked me to base on myself, where the Punisher murders her at the end. And it was too weird for me, man. That was just like,
oh, wow.
I stopped going to signings, like, or public events. Like, it was wild.
Oh my God. That's not good. Did
No,
Marvel back you up at all?
No, they not only didn't back me up. I remember the Wednesday that it was going to come out. My editor Axel just sort of called me in the morning and said, I just want you to know that the word on the street and the online is that every major comic news site is going to give your book a bad review. Like Comic Book Resources, News, they're all going to they're going to trash your book, and people are really going to trash it. And I'm just letting you know, so take care. He said, take care.
Yeah, take care.
And I was like, I'm in danger. I was like the kid in the back of the bus. Yeah.
Now, I have to say, I read it in 2010, so I reread it again today. What's so bad about this book that people had to trash it? Like, I don't understand what is trash worthy about it. It's a good comic. It's a good story.
Thank you. You're very kind to say that. Yeah. I think a lot of people didn't read it. I think this is when you promote something as like, this is going to be the gotcha. You're putting a target on your creative talent when you do that, because you're starting off on like this. And a lot of the people who had trashed it hadn't really read it.
Okay. All right. I get it. It's
just, and it's
we're supposed to, we were told not to like this, therefore we're going to trash it and we're going to get angry. And yes, I know that's, again, my second your boy Zach reference in this chat today, but that's his big thing these days, to the point where, like, Zach, nobody cares, but like, who cares if the Critical Drinker reviews a movie or not? Who cares? It doesn't matter. Right. But this is a little different because Marvel told you to do this.
Yes.
And then didn't back you up. I see that there's a difference. And then, like, why? Because it's feminist? Like, with these people who hate feminists? Because, to be honest, I don't really see it as a feminist comic.
No, it's really not. It's really not. Like, even the Punisher himself at the end of that story is kind of like, oh, and he's kind of reading her story at the very end, like, oh, okay, well, here's the thing, like, I would get a lot of like trolling, those emails, like there'd be like, you feminazi and this and that, and like I would be getting them for years and years afterwards, and I was very angry. Like I was like, part of all these different activism, comics activism things, like, it's the, they'd be like, it's the incels, it's the bad people. We need to get them out of comics and they're hurting you and this and that. And for years and years and years, I was so angry. And then like one day, like years and years later, I got another trolling email, and they're like, yeah, feminazi, this and that. And instead of responding like I said, look, come on, like, let's just talk here. We're both comic book fans. What comic books do you like? Like this and that. And then they responded like just sort of normal, like, oh, I like the, this and that. And then I went, oh yeah, and so like, and we just had a conversation. And it started as a troll attacking me, and it turned into this it's a pleasant conversation. And that was like one of the big turning points of my whole life, Was just that because the pain went away for myself. The pain went away.
Absolutely. I've got a small station. I'm making a comic book that sold less than 1,000 copies. You know what I mean? Like, and believe it or not, I got like mean, nasty emails. People made videos about me. A guy invited me on his channel to make fun of me, and I didn't know, you know. And I used to rise to the bait and fight with all of these people. And then one day, I got Pat Broderick to do a varied cover. I'm a big Pat Broderick fan, so to me,
me
I'm
too.
Like,
yeah.
I'm a comic book geek, freaking out, showing this thing, and the patriarch, my character, is like in a pose, and he's like, "Oh, he looks gay," you know, and like was like. So I just said, "Oh, I'm sorry you feel that way." I said, "I'm just so excited about Pat Broderick. I'm a big fan." I said, and I was just like, "I'm determined not to take this." And the guy said, "You know what? But I like your other cover. Maybe." He ended up back in my comic, not the Pat Broderick cover. Maybe he did. I don't know. And then he messaged me, said, "You know what? I'm sorry. Because you get so used to just arguing and being, you forget that there's actually and that was a turning point. And ever since then, I don't engage. Like if you want to start a fight with me, maybe if you catch me on a bad day, guys, maybe you catch me the day after I break my neck or something like that, I'll fight with you. But like if I just ignore it. And I've said to other people, don't engage. And then somebody tried to call me out. "Oh, look at John, doesn't want to engage with me." I don't, you know. There's guys at work I can't stand. You know what I do? I don't talk to them. You know, and you know what? My life is great. So I agree with you. I agree. You know, yeah. Most of in his defense, most of those nasty emails were from Nick. He's been helping me in my comic. That's a great approach to trolling. Don't feed the trolls. Absolutely, guys. I can only say that. Don't. And what you did is you engaged the troll and not turned it against him. But when I went on that guy's channel, I just kept my cool and I talked and I promoted my comic and I talked about my love of and you could see his chats like, this guy's all right. And then the guy who invited me on, you could see he kind of, I guess, read which side it was on, but whatever, you know. Meet me in the
I mean, it's like
I wouldn't fight. I'm in the military. Don's seen some stuff. I'm not fighting. Yes. And good ideas. If you don't feed these people, they don't have content, and then they go away or they move on. Next thing you know, they're talking about,
or they become your friends. You never know. You know. So that's how I ended up handling that stuff, and I was a much happier person. Like after that, I was just so much more happier person after, you know, changing my approach.
But that I didn't realize I was at first, because I don't know, where was I in 2010 that I think at that point I started like avoiding comic book media, because I think at that point I realized it was all this has nothing to do. Well, maybe it does have something, but one day I was watching David Letterman and I forget who was on, and then they went to the clip of the latest movie, and I'm like, I'm staying up late to watch celebrities sell me a movie. Like David Letterman is just a commercial show. Like I don't like watching commercials. I'm not going to stay up to watch like extra Tide, whatever commercial show. Why? So I stopped watching all talk shows, and very soon after that, I stopped reading like comic book journalism. I used to be really active with Newsarama and read everything, and I'm like, it's just so I must have missed all of this. I don't remember, but I got the comic. I read it. If somebody told me it was a feminist comic, I would have been like, how? Like, how?
Yeah, that's not. I mean, I just write like I had received a book agent, International Creative Management, one of the biggest book agents, had taken me on, had approached me to do a tell-all feminist book about the comic book industry. Oh. And this was in the late aughts too, right? And they kept rejecting a manuscript because they said, this doesn't sound feminist enough.
Well, what's a feminist supposed to sound like?
It was just that they just kept going, this doesn't sound like, like this needs to be more angry or whatever. And eventually I just walked away with I published it on my own. Like I just.
I was going to say, did you publish? Is it published?
I did. It was self-published. It's like, it was self-published, and I sold a bunch of digital copies and whatnot. But it was just, I was so frustrated because I can only be myself. I'm not like a cause or a symbol. I can only be myself.
At the risk of being like I don't like identity politics in the slightest, and that includes feminism. Like I just think like it's divide and conquer, and I feel if like somebody has a legitimate complaint, it's a human complaint, not whatever feminist. So my nieces get mad when I say that. I'm just like, well, you know, but I look at this comic again. I got to keep harping on it. Like, if it was a feminist comic, she would have won at the end and been like invincible, and you know what I mean, and girl power, or whatever. But she was a tragic character from the beginning. I actually started to cringe a few times. I forgot how
it's raw.
I was going to say, based on your life, I'm sorry.
No, not exactly. No, not exactly. But it's, you know, I mean, it was raw. And, you know, it was both liberating to write, and also it's a little like, you know, I mean, it was just heavy, you know?
Yeah. So, but it was one of the few times, like they say, like these days, all the villains have to be sympathetic. That comic worked in the fact that I despised Butterfly, but I also felt bad for her.
Yep.
Like she was dealt a raw deal, but she could have gotten help, or she could have gotten. She chose to deal with a bad deal in the worst possible way. And I've met people like that. Like you got a raw deal, man. You know, and you're reacting to a bad. Like my sympathy's gone now because you're 30 years old and you could have done something different. I agree with Nick over here. Old zines with comic creator interviews were the best. Yes.
Oh, like, yes.
Like stuff absolutely. Like Wizard, I loved, where they had like a 12, 13 page interview with Todd McFarlane, and you felt like you got to know him. You know what I mean? And maybe
Comics
they
Journal
brought up
before that.
Yeah. That woman, she don't sound enough like a woman or feminine. Give him, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
You don't fit in the box that we created.
Pretty much, yeah. So,
were you an? Am I remembering wrong? Were you an editor at Marvel?
I was no, I was never. I wasn't an editor at Marvel. I was just an editor at DC, and at DC, I was an editor on like Batman Black and White. I worked with Mark Chiarello, the art director, and then I worked for the Justice League office. I worked in Justice League, Aquaman, Supergirl, etc. Oh,
cool. How was that? How would you? If you could just wave a wand and get back into the mainstream, would you rather be a writer? Would you rather be an editor? What do you like?
That's difficult because I mean I would like to write, but also I really enjoy working with talent, and I enjoy helping them, you know, produce their story and encourage their story and produce it and shepherd it. And like I really do also enjoy that. So I think it's really kind of like a mix of both, you know. There's sometimes like I know like I like writing and being creative, but also I mean the editing, I like the nurturing and mentoring of being an editor.
So how did you go from a 16-year-old girl in a comic book store into mainstream comics?
I was working at the PR office of my college, and the girl was dating the woman there was dating the president of Valiant Comics. Which was going to become Acclaim Comics, and she was just saying there's a job opening for, you know, and I had just graduated, and she said there's a job opening, so I interviewed for it, and Fabian Nicieza was like the head of that whole Acclaim thing, and I got the job.
Oh, cool.
And I was just thrown into it because it was like, you know, it was working. I was like working on Shadow Man and stuff like that, and Disney books. Yeah.
Those were good comics too.
They really were. The quality was just very, very high bar of quality, and really, really nice people. Like the nicest, still to this day, the nicest people I ever worked with. Yeah.
And then from there, you went to Marvel, or did you go to DC?
From there, like they had like a massive layoff thing because they were changing back to Valiant, I guess. And so I worked in advertising for a while, and then just I don't know what possessed me. I wrote these call letters to all these editor names in DC because I was just like, I really just want to go back into comic book editing, and within a week of sending those out, I had like 4 different editors at DC contact me.
Where was this? 90s?
This was 2000. This was 2000 now.
Okay,
yeah.
Comics were dipping in the late 90s, but they were on the rise again. So I guess they were.
Yep. So and then like I just I decided to take the job with Mark Chiarello in the creative services thing, because like that was like working with all the great artists, you know, like in Batman Black and White, and I got to know Darwin Cook very well.
Oh,
And it
wow.
was like, you know, it really nice guy. And it was just like I worked with so many, you know, like Marie Severin and just so many different, and it was just incredible. What an incredible experience.
Oh, I met Marie Sevens at a comic convention, you know, and I think I made a fool out of myself stuttering. Like, and she was like, "It's okay, calm down." and she was sitting with Ramona Frieden, and Ramona just gave me a print. She autographed it and gave it. I must have looked pathetic, so she just gave it. And to the life of me, I have no idea where that is. You know, a drawing of the Super Friends signed by her.
She's great talent.
God. I got it. It's got to be in a comic box someplace that I'll never find.
Sure it's there. I'm sure it's there.
Someday after I'm gone, the speculators will be going through what is this crap?
I was like, no.
Yeah. Who else did you work? Do you ever meet John Byrne? I want to hear a good John Byrne story.
I do have a good story. You know, because I would hear stories that he would. I'm being honest. Like some people would be like, "Hey, he's a little bit of a jerk," and this and that, and this. And so we were all in the Justice League office. We were taking John out for a big lunch, whatever. And so I got to meet him, and he was talking, and he was the nicest man. I mean, one of the nicest talents that I had ever met. And like, you know, and I had to tell like, you know, I remember this, and he was so gracious.
Oh, cool.
And just lovely person.
I met him when I was 14. I went to go see him. He was signing when he was doing the Fantastic Four, and he autographed my Fantastic Four. What was the number? 246 with Galactus on the cover. And I just went, who's your like? Again, I was a nervous little kid. Who's your favorite in the comics? He goes, The Invisible Woman. I was like, I love your comics. You're great. And he just looked at me like I guess he just saw an awkward little kid. So I embarrassed. That's what I do. I embarrass myself in front of comic book professionals. But he was so nice. And then everybody's like, yeah, John Byrne is the worst. He's the meanest. And I was like, you know, I met him. I met him and Walt Simonson the same day. And Walt Simonson was like, he was just funny and nice. You know, and it was funny because this was 40 years ago and he still seemed like everybody's grandpa. He was just like the nicest, lovable guy. Maybe he just didn't like the people who told you that. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I wonder.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, you know, like, you know, it was just, I don't know what it was. I just, you know, like, I was like, John Byrne, really nice guy.
Yeah, John, I do it at least once a day, embarrass myself. It's funny because now I'm starting to wonder, like, maybe you were a jerk. Like, you go up to John Byrne when he's ordering a sandwich at the deli or something like that and pester him, you know, like, I don't know.
I don't know.
The way I think is if you're at the venue, if you're at the comic book convention, it's okay to approach these people. But I've worked in New York, in Manhattan for years. I've seen actors and they're with their kids. I'm like, hey, look. And I see them looking at me and I'm like, I'm not going to bother him. The guy's just, you know, so I could see if they snapped in that case, I'm not going to say that guy's I can't remember his name. One of the guys from The Sopranos. He was a jerk, you know. So anything I haven't brought up, I don't want to keep you here. I just realized we've been talking for over an hour and anything you want to say?
Goodness, I just want to say to my friends on, you know, I would like to say to my friends online, you know, and social media who've been so supportive and so sweet and so nice. Thank you so much. Just all of you. Thank you so much. You've really gotten me through some tough times and just thank you from the bottom of my heart. You know, you're good people, and you know, you've renewed my love of comics. Just like going on here, John, is really talking with you just about comics. It's just brought it all the good stuff back. And
yeah, I've been asking you for a long time, and you know, you've been saying I'm not ready yet. Yeah, I'm not ready yet. And then you were the one that recommended Mark Millar to come on my channel. I keep saying Mark Miller to come on my channel, so I got to thank you for that. Logic was asking, but the chat was going by so quick. What was the first year that you started at Marvel Comics?
Probably I was working with editorial in 2007.
I don't know why this comment makes me laugh. I once told Bart Sears, I like the way you draw exit wounds.
I can see that, yeah.
Ralph Macchio was a jerk to me. Well, Don, you probably deserved it. So
Ralph Macchio actually invited me once to the office to just, you know, talk and stuff. And he was kind of a nice guy. I mean, at least to just talking to him, you know.
Yeah, I got to say, well, I'm trying to think. I have one bad encounter with a comic professional, but it happened on this channel. Everybody knows what I'm talking about, so there you go. But everybody's nice, approachable. Everybody, I don't know. Ralph, yeah, the Karate Kid. I remember. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. I will bring up you. You are on Twitter. I'm going to bring up your link again if anybody wants to follow you. And you have a YouTube channel. You said you talk about conspiracy theories.
Just a little bit, like, just like, are there aliens and blah, blah, blah. It's like a little bit, it's a hodgepodge of everything. It's comic books, it's the toys I collect, it's like, are there aliens? All that good stuff, just a little bit of each.
Conspiracy theory.
What?
What's your favorite conspiracy?
My favorite, that Paul McCartney had died in the mid-'60s, and they replaced him with a double who's living to this day.
Yeah,
Fall. Which I don't believe.
Right. I don't believe most of them, but I do love them all. It's funny. I dated a girl who, she said, I don't believe it, but I want to believe it. She's like, there was a website all about it. It was called Faul, Faul. I wonder if it's still up, but it's all about the conspiracy to hide that. They were making too much money and too many people invested in them. And when he died, they had to keep him going. I love that. I had a friend over. My friend Roy came over and he was talking about Tartaria. Do you know about this? I never heard about it.
Tartaria, is that the one where there was really like, that was the original America or something like that?
Right.
Or like the culture.
They came out of Russia and they made a worldwide empire.
Yes.
They made all the post offices and courthouses and everything, and then they were destroyed by a flood, and the governments are
the mud flood.
Oh man, I'm fascinated by that. I'm fascinated by it. I don't believe it. I also don't believe in the hollow Earth, but I love it. I have a coworker that's a legit flat earther, and
okay,
and I argue with them all the time. Like to the point like he like threw down his tools and he was ready to fight. I'm like, dude. I'm just asking you questions about the flat Earth. But I also love the fake one. Are birds real? Do you know that one?
Yeah. I know. I like the jokey things. That's sort of like kind of like like a.
Some guy made up a fake conspiracy theory just to be funny. Like birds aren't real; they're really government spies. I don't know why that makes me laugh. Every time I see birds now, I'm just like.
You wonder, or maybe that's the conspiracy is that it's true, but they've turned it into a joke to cover it up.
Right. I mean, to the point, like if the government was to show proof of space aliens right now, I wouldn't believe it. They're hiding the space aliens, and then the government's like, "Oh, John, by the way, here's space aliens proof." I'm like, "Well, now there's no space aliens because if you guys said it's true, then it's not true."
Yep.
Birds only work for Odin. Yes. Okay. Do you have any comic book works coming out? Are you working on anything you want to talk about?
Not at the moment. I'm thinking of working on actually an anthology series that I may at some point put on a crowdfunding about these types of wacky conspiracy theories, like Paul is dead and then flat Earth, things like that. So I've been talking to some artists. So if I do any sort of next project, it'll probably be that.
Oh, cool! And you're going to crowdfund that?
Yeah. I may pay for just a couple of the first few stories to be done, and then I would crowdfund to show it and all that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what platform? Do you know Kickstarter or Indiegogo, or you haven't given it much thought yet?
I did have my own comic book that like 10 years ago called The Horror Lovers that I fully funded on Kickstarter. And that was a great experience. So, I may do that again, but yeah, it's a lot of work. It's definitely a lot of work. It's a commitment.
So I got to ask, there was just a comic book that just came out called Blue Book. I think it was by Dark Horse. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it was comic book stories of UFO abductions, like historical UFO abductions. Now, whether or not they're true or not, that's not what I'm talking about. But it was a comic book version of the people's stories. And I think conspiracy theories in a comic book would work wonders. I think that is just so perfect. Is this what you're talking about, or are you thinking of more of like a magazine or a novel?
I think it's just like comic book stories of conspiracies. Like 10 years ago, I worked with Blue Water. I pitched a conspiracy series like that called Beyond with them, and we released a book on Edward Snowden. And then on the Joker crimes and archetype. And that was just so much fun. And I always thought, like, that's like the number one thing I would like to go back to is something like that. That's a comic book, but it's about these real life weird stories. And like, are they true? Awesome. I love that stuff.
Yeah, me too. That would be great. That would, I'd look forward to that. If when you're ready to come back, we'll talk about that. I'd love to talk about that. Yeah. My wife is rediscovering religion, and I don't believe in anything. Like, I'm very skeptical about everything. So like, husband and wife, we sit here and we talk about stuff. Oh, there's space aliens, whatever. And I always say my default is I don't believe in anything. I need to see the proof. I want to see the proof. So, but I'm fascinated. I want there to be space aliens. Wouldn't it be cool if there was a Santa Claus? I mean, wouldn't that be a better world? You know what I mean? Or Spider-Man? Yeah. And if there are superheroes, I want them to be Superman. I don't want them to be the boys. You know what I mean? I don't want to watch stuff like that. So, unsolved mysteries. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
my wife is yelling at me. Real. And I've been keeping you. I always do that. I always say, let's close and then talk for another 20 minutes. Yeah. What? Michael Hen? Nick is going crazy. Mike, that's my brother. All right. What happened to Santa, John? I almost gave away something about my comic book, but I'm working.
And your comic book is Heroic Tales.
Correct, Heroic Tales.
How can I buy that? How can I buy that?
You are so good. You're my favorite guest that ever existed. Reminding me to
plug your stuff, man.
I'll put
every episode. Yep.
So right now it's on Indiegogo, but it's going forward. Its home is going to be on Fund My Comic. I don't know if you're familiar with Fund My Comic.
I've started to hear something about that. Yeah.
I think it's about a year old. It's owned by Luke Stone, who did the pre-press for my comic. I got Luke's phone number. I could call him up. I messed up the funding on my comic, and he fixed it. So I'm loyal, So I'm going to be going. But I also did Indiegogo, so this is active right now. And this is the Renzo Rodriguez cover, and then this is the back cover. I just paid for the printing today, guys, so it's happening. Are you familiar with Mike Gustovich? I got Mike Gustovich cover. He did the Justice Machine. Nice. Oh my God, I love this. I love this cover. And if you don't mind,
that's gorgeous.
Play the trailer?
What?
Do you mind if I play the trailer?
I don't mind at all. Play it. Absolutely.
So that's my trail. It's on Indiegogo right now. How do I stop this? Boomer's got a boom, right? But I made I made an homage to Superman, but he's also a father. He's also a loving husband. He's a beloved superhero. Like, I just wanted it. I came up with the idea a couple of years ago. Like, everybody's talking about toxic masculinity and all that stuff. So I just wanted to make like positive masculinity. So I was like, what would be like the most positive thing a male superhero would be? Well, he has to be a husband. He has to be a father. So, they homeschool their kids. They homestead because, I don't know if you saw the trailer, the wife has scars. That'll be explored in issue number 4. So, like, if you're a superhero, just, how Peter Parker is always worried about Aunt May. I just imagine you have an infant and you have, a wife and 7 kids. There's a lot that he needs to protect. So, unfortunately, the patriarch got his powers in public, so people know him. He has no secret identity. So the best thing he could do is keep everybody off the grid, you know. So everyone's, and that's going to cause problems in a couple of issues down the road where the kids are like, Dad, am I prisoner here? Can I leave the farm? You know, I'm 19 years old. I'd like to go get a girlfriend, you know, things like that. So, you know, I don't know. I kind of like that. So please, everybody, check it out.
I saw it had the line. You had the line, "Timeless stoicism."
Yeah, Kyle. Yeah, he's. I talk a lot. I don't know. I'm a big fan of RJ from the Fourth Age. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Very heady, very philosophical, and me and him talk a lot. So you know, we talk about classic stoicism, and
I read Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius, I like.
Yeah, and that's what I'm. And Marcus Aurelius is, if you remember, spoiler for my comic, his biggest weakness was his son Commodus. You know, you know what I mean. So I'm probably telling. I always spoil too much. You get me talking, I'm like a motor mouth. So yeah, I'm gonna stop. Nick, I ain't arguing. RJ is slumming, hanging around with me, but but this is fun. I like making the comic book again, guys. I get uncomfortable pitching myself something. I paid for the shipping today, so I'm gonna start shipping that comic before the Indiegogo campaign closes.
Nice.
So, yeah. So
okay.
Yeah, and somebody said I'm telling Mark Miller that he's no longer my favorite guest. Whoever I'm currently talking to is my favorite guest.
That's the way it should be.
That's my policy. That's my policy.
Yep, that's perfect policy.
That's my policy. You know, my dinner that I'm eating right now is my favorite dinner.
Thank you, Hail Valor. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Commodus, he was such a bad emperor, they named toilets after him. Don't spoil my comic. Yeah, RJ's 40-minute philosophical rants. Yes. When I listen to RJ, I'm in the car commuting to work and back because I need to focus. You can't put on RJ and then read a comic book and play a video game. He's more intelligent than anybody else. You have to market yourself. I hate doing it too. Yeah, Stan Lee is dead, and nobody else out there is going to push my comics but me. So I got to push my own comics.
Yeah, and it looks great. It looks great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I guess we'll ask last question. We'll round it up to 1 hour and a half. Are you comfortable on camera, like selling yourself and pushing your promoting your books and comics and things like that?
When I have to. When I have to, I mean, I would love to do it, but I also, like I said, I love supporting other people's desire to make these stories themselves, and their to encourage them, because it's something that I just think is wonderful.
Because so many people, like either beforehand or afterwards, like, I hate doing this. You know, big wigs. I don't like. And I got to say, I like talking comics. I'll talk to comics to anybody, fans, creators, you know, other guys, you know, in the same category as me. But when it comes to like promoting myself, I get a little skeeved and weirded out. Like if you could see my whole demeanor change when you're like, oh, you have a comic book, like, oh,
yeah,
like we said, Stan Lee's not here. I got to promote myself. Yeah, Tax says you should go live once a week.
Well, baby steps, Zach. Baby steps.
and you have all the connections, you know.
I do have some. I mean, I have known a lot of comic folk.
Yes. We're going to unleash. We'll end this with the new conspiracy theory. John, I did not survive the injuries. I'm either CGI or a clone or a lizard guy in a mask. You know. So there you go.
All right.
We'll put up a poll on Twitter. What am I really? I hope I'm a lizard guy in a mask.
That could be fun. That's like V, the TV series.
Yeah, CGI means once the camera's on, I don't exist, but lizard guys still exist whether there's a camera or not. Yep. Logic Finest, as always, good comments. Comments.
Thank you.
Have I made up my own catchphrase? Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. I got to make up my own catchphrase. I promote, edit, proofread comics for novels. It's a great feeling helping others.
Yep.
I have to say, I never would. My comic wouldn't exist if not for the help of other people. I've reached out to so many people. Nick in the chat is one of the guys, like Brian Bow, who does Wolf and Batsy. He's been instrumental in helping me. Fabian, Fabrizio Aiello, who does Horace H. Hoover. You know, J.M. Day Matisse off camera gave me advice on things. Just every guest that I've ever spoke to in some way helped me make my comic. You know, no man is an island. you know,
Yeah,
expectorate.
There you go.
There we go. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's a bumper sticker. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Anything you want to say before we go?
No, just like again, just thanks to you and thanks to everybody, who's been so nice, and just you've given me my love of comic books back, and I do appreciate it. I mean that.
Doing this, I'm more into comics than I've ever been before. Even though I don't buy Marvel or DC anymore, I'm so into comics. I like 2016. I was at a lull. I thought I was done. I was thinking of selling all my comics, and now I talk to people. Yeah.
Well, you're in the spirit of it. You're in the spirit. Yeah, you're in the spirit of it.
Yes,
and that's so a beautiful thing.
And talking to people. Thanks a lot. I enjoyed this.
Yep, me too.
And we'll leave on K. Ojo's nice comment. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.